I have such a difficult time with the goal-setting crowd, the manifestation crowd. And I'll explain a little bit why. But when it comes to knowing and getting what you want, there are a couple of things that have to happen first. Now, this is something we're going to dive deep into and look at it in a big picture sense in the upcoming Body as Compass course. If you're interested in that, just let me know in the comments. Happy to send you the details. It's going to be a very different sort of course than the ones that I've run before. But anyway, what I'd like to talk about is, as I mentioned, knowing and getting what you want. And a lot of people will spend their time thinking about all of those things or totally unsure of those things in the first place. And maybe it's actually something to do with the nature of the work that I do, the way that I talk about these things. But a good number of people, when they first reach out, are a little unsure about what they want, or they feel a little lost at the time. They're not sure what the next step is, or what direction to go. And this disorientation is profoundly problematic for us as living organisms. We cannot think and we cannot act without effective orientation. It is disturbing for us psychologically if we don't know where we are. It is upsetting for us physically speaking. It puts us ill at ease if we are disoriented in our lives. In fact, I talked to a good number of people who are dealing with all sorts of otherwise unexplainable issues in life. Challenges around codependency, autoimmune issues, chronic pain often, just a general anxiety as well, if they are disoriented. Because again, without effective orientation, you cannot think and you cannot act. Now, as an example, I joke about this quite often. A mentor of mine once sort of told me the joke that when a person wakes up, when they regain consciousness after they've been knocked out, the first thing they ask is, where am I? Again, you must know where you are if you want to think and act effectively. Now, a lot of people, I think it's a self-help kind of thing, personal development in general, they'll talk about like, what do you want? Is like the big thing. As if knowing what you want helps at all if you don't know where you are in the first place. That's why typically when I'm working with a new client, one of the first things we will do is orient to the situation and to the challenge as they see it. You may have heard me ask this sort of series of questions of people before. What's this situation like for you? And in this situation, what's to your left? What's to your right? What's in front? What's behind? What we're doing with a series of questions like that, and you can scroll through somewhere in these videos, you'll see an example of that talked through. What we're doing is mapping to the situation as the person perceives it. Because rather than just take massive action or think about what you want, it's a little helpful to know if you're in a minefield, if you're walking on thin ice, if you're right next to the edge of a pit. And so often, people are just unaware of these things. Excuse me, frog in my throat. But so often people are unaware of their internal perception of the situations that they're in. And it's problematic then when they go to take the next step, because they may very well want to move forward, but there could be a huge brick wall in front of them. Or maybe they want to do the right thing, they want to move toward what's right, but there's a giant gaping hole in the ground in their mind's eye. You don't know these things unless you ask those questions. And if you just take massive action toward your goals, it's pretty problematic. Now, the real challenge is that when someone is profoundly disoriented, when they really can't seem to make any headway toward what they're going for, they try all these things, they spin their wheels, they never end up getting anywhere. The challenge is that when we go to map out these situations, when we think about what's in front or what's left or what's right or what's behind, some people will blank out altogether. They won't actually be able to see anything in their mental landscape. So if you're going through this yourself, it's a little difficult to try and do by ourselves, but you could work with it. If you imagine what this situation you're in is like, and you think about, okay, in this situation, not in real life, not my bookshelf is to my left, my other bookshelf is to my right, not literally, but in this situation, if you close your eyes and imagine what's left, what's right, what's front, what's back, some people, as I mentioned, will just blank out. I talked with a woman yesterday who could only see something in front of her, couldn't see anything left, couldn't see anything right, couldn't see anything behind. Which means, for her, in terms of her perception, She can't tell what she has left. She can't tell what's right for her. She can't tell what's behind her, what she's put behind her, where she's been. She can only focus on what she's looking forward to. Effectively, she's tunneled her vision. She's developed tunnel vision. So what happens then is that we have to consider what we can see in these situations. And then quite literally, you just slowly begin to look a little left and slowly begin to look a little right. And it can be profoundly uncomfortable. For her, in that situation, she got this profound ocular migraine when she started to turn and look to the right. Her body actually did not want to look toward the right from there. And when she came back to center, it dissipated. But every time she would turn to the right, she had this incredible headache, sort of focused around her eye. And I was working with another woman this morning who she thought that basically her whole left side was numb, was gone from her self-image. She couldn't feel much of anything. And when she imagined what was left in this metaphorical representation, she went blank again. Now, I want to be very clear. You cannot necessarily get what you want if you don't know where you are now, because the next step you're going to take will always depend on where you are now. So this is why I put such a primary focus on our ability to orient. And we can do that in a couple of different ways. Again, you might literally look around and orient yourself to where you are now. If you are in a state of acute anxiety, if you are confused, disoriented, discombobulated, if you're frazzled and stressed out and you're pulled in a zillion different directions, it can be a really therapeutic thing to actually take a moment and orient to your literal surroundings, to place yourself somewhere. But you aren't merely your physical experience. There's a psychological landscape as well. We're making our way through these intermeshed landscapes, through the physical landscape of my desk, my bookshelves, my room. We make our way through these psychological landscapes as well. And that's where this idea of what the challenge is like is so helpful, because then you can get a sense of what's in front and left and right and behind. And your next step in life toward what you want is always, again, I cannot emphasize it enough, it's always going to depend on where you are now. And so many people will just take the next step without orienting to it. And again, you could fall into a pit. You could be walking on thin ice. You might be walking on a tightrope. Imagine if you sense that you're walking on a tightrope and you want to do the right thing. It's like, well, you can't take a step to the right in this case because you're walking on a tightrope. Or you want to think about what options you have left. Doesn't matter. You're walking on a tightrope. That's why orienting to these things is so effective for us, both in terms of our physical experience and our psychological experience. So, when you know where you are, then you can start to worry about knowing and getting what you want. It was a little bit of a trick to title a video this. I understand that. But you must know where you are in order for anything of what you want to have any relevance. Because maybe what you want then is to get the hell off the tightrope, or to get yourself out of that minefield, or to stop walking on eggshells, or whatever the case is. Knowing what you want depends in large part upon where you are. And most people, the reason why they're a little unsure of what they want and why they will almost never get what they want is because they have no clue where they are now. They're living in a trance, a fugue state of sorts. They're just wandering around in this sort of sleepwalking tendency. They're just a series of habits playing themselves out. So without that awareness, we cannot make a deliberate choice about what comes next. So again, huge primacy on your ability to orient. And once you've gotten a sense of where you are, physically, mentally, then think about what you want. And even still, even knowing where you are, it can be very difficult for people to have a sense of what they want. This is where tuning into your embodied experience becomes very important, because you have old wisdom, we'll say, old wiring, although I don't like the mechanistic metaphors, but you have a very deep, innate compass that helps you get what you want. We're wired Again, sloppy metaphor. I don't like the mechanical ones, but we are wired, we'll say, to move toward pleasure and away from pain, right? We sort of know this. We don't have to think about this. It is not fun for me to slap my hand. It hurts. I don't want that. I don't like that. So you likely have a sense of what you don't want based on your embodied experience. Yeah? There are certain foods you don't want to eat. There are certain smells you don't want to smell. There are certain feelings you don't want to feel. We might call these the yucks. You'll likely hear me talk about these quite often. Getting a keen awareness of what you do not want, like the via negativa approach, very useful, right? There are certain things you likely do not want to put up with anymore, and you do not want to tolerate and do not want to settle for. Start there. If you are unsure of what you want, I don't know what I want, what should I want, what's this, what's that, who cares? Figure out what you do not want. Set these filters for yourself and go from there. I recommend people start with a very simple practice of what are the yucks, and start with the basic stuff. I always joke about this, but for me, decaf coffee, yuck. I don't want it. I'm not into it. What else is a yuck for me? Steak that's too well done, yuck. Why bother? You just, no, not for me. What else is yuck? White chocolate, yuck. Why bother? Dark chocolate all the way, obviously. So you start with the simple things, yeah? What you'll find is that larger, more abstract, maybe more significant things emerge from the yucks. If you let yourself tap into that sense of revulsion, yuck, if you give it voice and give it form and give it gesture, you'll mobilize something powerful within you. That sense of revulsion is so significant for your ability to orient yourself in life. So you go through that. Yuck. Intellectual laziness. Yuck. People's stupid snap judgments. Yuck. People that don't think my mustache is awesome, right? Like, we can have some fun with it. We can be serious. We can be playful. We can be whatever. Eventually, you'll get a clearer embodied sense of what you do not want. Now, with that, it becomes very apparent then, relatively speaking, what you do want. So it's not that you can necessarily guide your life by negation, but man, you can narrow the playing field quite a bit. You can reduce the number of things you have to think about quite a bit by getting keenly aware of revulsion and what you do not want and disgust and all of that. It's like you've set up your boundaries against the yucks. And then you figure out, well, okay, I don't want that, and I don't want that, and I don't want that, and I don't want that either. What do I want? These are the yums. And a lot of people, again, can use that same process to hone their internal compass and orient toward the yums a little more effectively. Yum, single origin coffee. Yum, like sleepy, rainy days in the Pacific Northwest. This is so nice. Yum, time outside. All of this, right? Clearly, for me, it's like, well, yum, get a good cup of coffee, go for a walk outside. Your life's going to be better off. What people often forget is that the big abstract things, they emerge from a bottom-up foundation. Phenomenologically speaking, meaning-making happens from the bottom up. It cannot happen from the top down. No amount of convenient explanations or nice analytical descriptions of a thing from the top down will help you find meaning and make sense of the world. No amount of top-down injunction or imposition about what you should want and how you should get it are going to be very effective. These things are bottom-up phenomena. That's how they work. We get a sense of those from our bottom-up, deeply rooted sensory experience. So you get a sense of your yucks and your yums, and from the bottom up, you build this distinct experience of your own internal compass. You set for yourself what you want by virtue of what you do not want. And as you take steps toward what you want, based on your orientation to where you are now, again, the orientation is primary to this process. And as you make moves toward what you want, the path is made by walking it, more or less. Is it always so simple? No. Are there infinite nuances based on your particular situation? Yes. Do I have any way of knowing those based on me talking into a camera? No, I'm sorry, I don't. If you would like some more support with this, you can reach out to inquire about working together privately. Or, if you're interested, the Body as Compass course is coming up later this month. You can drop a comment and I will send you the details. It's a very ugly link, or else I would just post it in the description, but I haven't made a pretty link for it yet. But hopefully this has given you some food for thought about how to determine what you want and how to get what you want. What I see more often than not is that people cause themselves a lot of problems simply by not having a clear sense of where they are now and what they are doing currently. They are sleepwalking. They're in a trance. They're just going through the motions, and they create a lot of problems for themselves that way. So I hope this has been illuminating for you. If you have other questions, feel free to drop them in the comments as well. Again, the Body as Compass course is coming up. It's going to be a really cool experience. We've got a good group coming together for it. So hopefully you can join us. And with that, take care. We'll talk soon.